This morning, before leaving the house, you sprayed on some perfume or rolled on some deodorant. It's almost a reflex. You don't want anyone to smell your real body odor. But perfume, scented soap, roll-on deodorant, all of that only appeared in a tiny fraction of human history. So hundreds of thousands of years ago, when your ancestors sweated under the sun, ran from wild animals, or sat huddled around a fire all day, how did they mask their body odor? The answer is stranger than you think. Before answering that question, you need to stop and reconsider the very assumption behind it. You're assuming body odor is something that needs to be hidden, a flaw that needs to be fixed. But modern science paints a far more complicated picture. Your body odor, the thing you try to eliminate every morning, is actually a sophisticated biological information channel shaped by evolution over millions of years, not a design flaw that needs correcting. In 1995, the Swiss immunologist Klaus Wedekind ran an experiment that later became famous as the sweaty t-shirt study. He had a group of men wear the same t-shirt for 2 consecutive nights with no scented products of any kind, no perfumed soap, no cologne. He then gave these sweat-soaked shirts to a group of women to smell and rate for pleasantness. The results caught the attention of the scientific world. Women tended to prefer the scent of men whose immune-related genes, known as the major histocompatibility complex, differed the most from their own. In other words, through smell alone, with no conversation, no glance at a face, their bodies could assess the genetic compatibility of a total stranger, a pairing that could produce offspring with more diverse and robust immune systems. What's fascinating is that this result nearly reversed itself when researchers repeated the experiment with women taking hormonal birth control. This group instead tended to prefer the scent of men whose immune genes were more similar to their own, the opposite of the natural tendency. This secondary finding further supports the idea that smell doesn't just register pleasant or unpleasant at random. It responds to very specific biological rules, ones that can shift depending on the hormonal state of the person doing the smelling, a level of sophistication few people would ever imagine their own nose was capable of. That means your ancestors' natural body odor wasn't some random, unpleasant thing that needed to be hidden at all costs. It was a kind of biological business card, quietly conveying information about the immune system, capable of influencing who was drawn to whom, without the person giving off that scent ever knowing they were sending a signal at all. The story goes even further. In 2014, the Swedish psychologist Mats Olsson and colleagues published a study showing that humans can smell when someone is sick, even before that person shows any outward symptoms. In the experiment, volunteers were given a mild immune system trigger, just enough to make their bodies start reacting as if fighting off an infection, but not enough to make them feel noticeably ill. Their sweat was collected and given to another group of people to smell. That group tended to rate the scent as more unpleasant and even rated the corresponding person's face as less attractive, even though they had no idea who had received the immune trigger. The human body, entirely unconsciously, is able to detect illness through scent before the illness has even had a chance that this entire evaluation process happened within just a few hours of the immune system beginning to react, far faster than the time it usually takes a person to realize they're getting sick themselves. In other words, the noses of the people around you may detect signs of illness in your body before you even notice it yourself. This is an early warning system operating entirely outside the conscious awareness of both the person sending the signal and the person receiving it. Now picture your ancestors living in a small group, in close physical proximity, day after day. In an environment like that, the ability to detect that someone was starting to fall ill just from body odor before they could infect the rest of the group could make a genuine difference between survival and death. Body odor in that context wasn't something to be erased. It was an early warning system, part of a silent chemical communication network that helped keep the entire community safer. So why did humans eventually start trying to change their body odor anyway? The earliest archaeological and written evidence of deliberately crafting fragrance for use on the body appears in ancient Mesopotamia about 3,200 years ago. On excavated cuneiform clay tablets, researchers found the name of a woman called Taputi, recorded with a title that roughly translates to royal perfume maker. She distilled flowers, oils, and various plant materials through a process considered the earliest recorded distillation technique in human history. This is regarded as the oldest surviving record of a named chemist, and her work centered on exactly the subject you're exploring right now, creating scent for humans to wear. The clay tablet recording Taputi's formula describes a process remarkably sophisticated for its time. She soaked flowers, oil, and fragrant calamus in water, then distilled and filtered the mixture repeatedly, a technique that wouldn't be rediscovered and systematized by Western chemists until thousands of years later. That shows that creating artificial fragrance, right from its earliest steps, was never a simple task anyone could do at home. It required specialized knowledge, specialized equipment, and time, resources only a privileged class could access. What's interesting is that these earliest fragrances almost certainly weren't created to hide body odor the way you think of it today. In ancient Egypt, a fragrance called kaifi, blended from honey, aromatic resin, wine, and various precious herbs, was burned in religious ceremonies, applied to statues of the gods, and reserved exclusively for the highest status members of society. For most of its early history, fragrance wasn't a mass-market hygiene product. It was a symbol of power, a statement of social status, sometimes a means of connecting with the divine, not a tool for masking the sweat of an ordinary person after a day of labor. So what about the majority of your ancestors, the ones who weren't nobility, who had no access to rare scented oils or temple kaifi? For them, body odor almost certainly wasn't treated as a problem that needed solving the way you understand it today. For most of human history, living in small groups, in near constant physical closeness with one another, natural body odor was simply a normal part of shared life, much like the sound of someone's breathing or the warmth radiating from another body. It wasn't something shameful. It was the backdrop, the foundational context of every intimate social interaction. This is where the story really flips your assumptions. You grew up in a world that treats natural body odor as something to be eliminated entirely, as fast as possible, where the more scent-free you are, the more civilized you seem. But if Wedekind and Olson are right, then the artificial layer of fragrance you spray on every morning may be masking a genuine biological information channel, one that once helped your ancestors choose mates with more complementary immune systems, and once helped them detect early who in the group was starting to get sick. You haven't lost that ability. Your brain and your nose still have the exact same machinery for processing those chemical signals. You're simply choosing to layer false information on top of it every single day without ever realizing that's what you're doing. So next time you pick up a bottle of perfume and spray a layer on before leaving the house, remember that you're not hiding a flaw. You're overwriting one of the oldest communication systems the human body ever developed, a system your ancestors, hundreds of thousands of years before the first bottle of perfume existed, likely knew how to listen to far more clearly than you do today.